Clint Eastwood didn't smile when he walked onto the Tonight Show stage. He never smiled. That was the brand, the squint, the silence, the coiled tension of a man who could kill you with a look. For 30 years, America had watched Clint Eastwood play the toughest men in cinema history, and somewhere along the way, people forgot he was playing anyone at all. They thought Clint Eastwood was the man with no name. They thought he was Dirty Harry. They thought he was the cowboy, the cop, the killer with a conscience. But on November 8, 1985, Johnny Carson saw something different. The audience erupted when Clint emerged from behind the curtain. Standing ovation, whistles. A few people shouting, "Go ahead, make my day." The line that had become so famous it followed him everywhere like a shadow he couldn't escape. Clint acknowledged the applause with a slight nod. No wave, no grin. Just that famous squint and a slow walk to Johnny's desk. He moved like a man who had all the time in the world and knew you'd wait for him. Johnny stood to shake his hand. Their grip was firm, professional. Two men who had known each other for years, but had never really known each other at all. "Clint, you look exactly the same as you did 20 years ago. What's your secret?" "I don't smile. Smiling causes wrinkles." The audience laughed. Clint's face remained stone. For the first 15 minutes, the interview was exactly what everyone expected. Clint talked about his new film. He talked about directing. He talked about the difference between acting and filmmaking. His words sparse and careful, each sentence stripped down to its essential meaning. Johnny played along, asking the standard questions, getting the standard answers. But something was bothering him. Something he couldn't quite identify. Then he realized what it was. Clint's hands. The man with no name, the fastest draw in the West, had hands that were trembling almost imperceptibly, not from age, not from cold, from something else. Johnny had interviewed thousands of people. He knew the signs. Clint Eastwood was holding something back, something heavy, something that wanted to come out. During the commercial break, Johnny leaned over. "You okay, Clint? You seem different tonight." Clint looked at him for a long moment. Those ice-blue eyes, the eyes that had stared down 100 villains, showed something Johnny had never seen in them before. Vulnerability. "I buried my father 3 weeks ago," Clint said quietly. "Nobody knows. I haven't told anyone." The stage manager signaled 30 seconds to air. "We don't have to talk about it," Johnny said. "We can keep it light." Clint shook his head slowly. "No, I think maybe I need to talk about it. I've been carrying it around and it's getting heavier every day." The cameras came back on. The audience settled into their seats, expecting more tough guy banter, more Dirty Harry one-liners. They weren't prepared for what came next. Johnny made a decision, the kind of decision that separated great interviewers from good ones. He threw away his note cards. "Clint, I want to ask you something I've never asked you before." "Dangerous territory, Johnny. When was the last time you cried?" The audience went quiet. The question hung in the air like gun smoke after a duel. This wasn't the kind of question you asked Clint Eastwood. This wasn't the kind of question Clint Eastwood answered. Clint was silent for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, the longest silence in Tonight Show history. Then he spoke. "3 weeks ago, at my father's funeral, first time in 40 years, the audience murmured. Clint Eastwood crying? The man who had defined American masculinity for 3 decades? The man who made tough look like an understatement? "Tell me about your father," Johnny said softly. Clint's jaw tightened. For a moment, Johnny thought he might shut down, retreat behind the mask, give some deflecting answer, and move on. But he didn't. "My father's name was Clinton Eastwood Sr. He was a steelworker during the Depression. He moved our family up and down the California coast looking for work. We lived in cars sometimes, tents, whatever we could find." He paused, gathering himself. "He was the toughest man I ever knew. Not movie tough, real tough. The kind of tough that comes from working 16-hour days in a steel mill to keep your family fed. The kind of tough that never complains, never explains, never asks for anything." "Sounds like someone else I know," Johnny said quietly. Clint almost smiled. Almost. "I spent my whole life trying to be like him. The silence, the strength, the never letting them see you sweat thing. I thought that's what being a man meant. I thought that's what he wanted me to be. Was it? That's what I found out at the funeral. And it broke me, Johnny. It absolutely broke me. The audience leaned forward, 300 people holding their breath. My father left me a letter. His lawyer gave it to me after the service. He said my father had written it 10 years ago when he first got sick and made him promise not to give it to me until he was gone. Clint reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was worn, creased, obviously read many times. You don't have to share it, Johnny said. That's private. I want to share it, because what he wrote in this letter is something I wish I had known 40 years ago, something I wish he had told me when he was alive. And if I share it now, maybe some father watching at home will do what my father couldn't do. Maybe they'll say these things while they're still here to see the impact. Johnny nodded. Go ahead, Clint. Clint unfolded the letter with hands that were visibly shaking now. His voice, that famous gravelly voice that had delivered 1,000 tough guy lines, cracked as he began to read. Dear Junior. He stopped, composed himself. He called me Junior. Nobody else ever did. Just him. He continued reading. Dear Junior, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And there are things I need to tell you that I was never brave enough to say while I was alive. Your mother always said I was emotionally constipated. She was right. I've watched your movies, every single one. I know I never told you that. I know I never told you I was proud of you. I know I sat there in silence when you won awards and made headlines and became one of the most famous men in America. But I was proud. God, I was so proud I thought my heart would burst. I just didn't know how to say it. Where I came from, men didn't say those things. Men worked. Men provided. Men stayed silent and let their actions speak. I thought I was teaching you to be strong by never showing weakness. I thought I was preparing you for a hard world by being hard myself. Clint's voice broke. Tears were streaming down his face now, and he made no move to wipe them away. I was wrong, Junior. I was so wrong. The strongest thing a man can do is tell the people he loves that he loves them. The bravest thing a man can do is cry when his heart is breaking. I know that now. I learned it too late. I'm writing this because I couldn't say it to your face. Because even now, dying, I can't make the words come out when you're in the room. That's my failure. That's my deepest shame. So here it is in writing, where I can't take it back. I love you, Clint. I have loved you every day of your life. When you were a skinny kid with big dreams, when you were a struggling actor nobody believed in, when you became a star and I was too proud to admit I needed you. You are my greatest achievement. Not because you're famous, because you're good, because you're kind, because you became the man I always wished I could be, but was too scared to try. I'm sorry I never told you. I'm sorry I made you think that being a man meant being silent. I'm sorry I left you guessing about how I felt. Don't make my mistake, Junior. Don't wait until you're dying to tell your children you love them. Don't hide behind toughness. Toughness is easy. Vulnerability is hard. And hard is what real men do. I love you. I always have. I always will. Your father. The studio was absolutely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper. 300 people frozen in the grip of something sacred. Clint folded the letter carefully and put it back in his pocket. His face was wet with tears. The man with no name, Dirty Harry, the toughest cowboy in cinema history, was crying on national television, and he didn't care. I read this letter 3 weeks ago, Clint said, his voice rough, and I haven't been the same since, because I realized something, Johnny. I realized I've been doing the same thing to my kids that my father did to me. What do you mean? I've got children, you know that, and I love them more than anything in this world. But have I told them? Really told them? Or have I done what my father did? Stayed silent, stayed tough, assumed they knew? He shook his head. I've been so busy being Clint Eastwood that I forgot to be dad. I've been so focused on the image, the brand, the myth, that I lost sight of what actually matters. Johnny reached across and put his hand on Clint's arm. It's not too late, Clint. That's what I keep telling myself, but my father's letter proves that it can be too late. He waited until he was dead to tell me he loved me. Dead, Johnny. He wrote those words from beyond the grave because he couldn't say them while he was breathing in front of me. Clint looked directly into the camera. I don't want that for my kids. I don't want them standing at my funeral, reading a letter, wishing I had been brave enough to say it to their faces. So I'm going to do something I've never done before. Right here, right now. He took a breath. Kyle, Allison, if you're watching this, I need you to hear something. I love you. I'm proud of you. Not because of anything you've done, but because of who you are. I know I'm not good at showing it. I know I've been absent. I know I've hidden behind work and toughness and this ridiculous image that the world expects from me. His voice cracked again. But I'm done hiding. Your grandfather taught me something with his letter. He taught me that silence isn't strength. Silence is fear, and I'm not going to be afraid anymore. He turned to Johnny. You asked me when I last cried. I told you 3 weeks ago, but that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is I've been crying every day since. Not in public. Not where anyone can see. But alone. In my house. Holding that letter. Grieving not just for my father, but for all the years we wasted being tough instead of being real. Johnny's eyes were glistening. Clint, what you're doing right now, this is the bravest performance of your career. It's not a performance, Johnny. That's the point. For the first time in 40 years, I'm not performing. I'm just being. And it's terrifying. Why terrifying? Because I spent my whole life building an image. The silent type. The tough guy. The man who doesn't need anyone. And now I'm sitting here crying on television, admitting that I need my family, that I miss my father, that I'm scared of dying alone with words I never said. He laughed bitterly. You know what Dirty Harry would say about this? He'd say I've gone soft, that I'm embarrassing myself, that real men don't cry on talk shows. What would Clint Eastwood say? Clint was quiet for a moment. Clint Eastwood would say, Dirty Harry can go to hell. Dirty Harry is a character, a fantasy, a man who doesn't exist. Clint Eastwood is real, and real men feel things. Real men hurt. Real men need to be loved and need to give love and need to stop pretending that emotions are weakness. The audience erupted into applause, not the polite applause of entertainment. Something deeper, something healing. My father was right about one thing in that letter, Clint continued. Toughness is easy. You know what's hard? This, sitting here, telling the truth, letting people see that the cowboy is just a costume and underneath is a regular guy who misses his dad and worries about his kids and lies awake at night wondering if he's done enough, been enough, loved enough. Johnny nodded slowly. You know what I find interesting, Clint? You've played heroes your whole career, men who save the day, men who stand up for what's right, men who protect the innocent. But I think what you're doing right now is more heroic than anything you've ever done on screen. Why? Because the villains in movies are easy. You can see them coming. You can shoot them. But the villain you're fighting right now, the voice in your head that says men don't cry, that emotions are weakness, that love is something you feel but never say, that villain is invisible. And you're beating him anyway. Clint smiled. A real smile. The first one Johnny had ever seen from him. You know what, Johnny? I think you missed your calling. You should have been a therapist. The audience laughed, the tension breaking slightly. I'm serious, though, Johnny said. What you've done tonight, millions of men needed to see this. Millions of fathers needed to hear that it's okay to tell their kids they love them. Millions of sons needed to know that their tough, silent fathers probably feel the same way your father did. Clint nodded. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. My father never got to see me receive his letter. He never got to see my face when I read those words. He never got to know how much it meant to me. He held up the letter. But maybe some father watching tonight will put down his pride and pick up the phone. Maybe some son will stop waiting for his dad to make the first move and just say what needs to be said. Maybe one letter, one conversation, one "I love you" will happen because of what we're doing here. And that would make it worth it? That would make everything worth it. Every tear, every moment of feeling exposed, every tough guy who thinks I've gone soft. If one family connects tonight because a cowboy cried on TV, then I did something more important than every movie I've ever made. The show went to commercial. When they came back, something had shifted. Clint was more relaxed, more present. The mask was off, and what remained was just a man. A son who missed his father. A father who wanted to do better. A human being who had finally stopped pretending. Johnny asked about the future, about what comes next. "I'm going to direct more," Clint said. "I'm going to make films about real people, complex people, people who feel things and struggle with things and aren't just cardboard cutouts of toughness." "And personally? Personally, I'm going to do what my father couldn't do. I'm going to tell my kids I love them every time I see them. I'm going to stop hiding behind work. I'm going to be present for the moments that matter." He paused. "And I'm going to visit my father's grave every Sunday. I'm going to sit there and talk to him. Tell him about my week. Tell him about his grandchildren. Tell him all the things we never said when he was alive. You think he can hear you?" Clint was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But that's not really the point, is it? The point is, I need to say it. Whether he hears it or not, I need to get the words out. Because the words we don't say are the ones that haunt us. The words we keep inside are the ones that turn into regret." The interview ended differently than any Clint Eastwood interview had ever ended. No tough guy send-off. No squint into the camera. Just a man thanking Johnny for the conversation, shaking his hand with genuine warmth, and walking off stage to a standing ovation that lasted almost 3 minutes. The next day, newspapers across America ran the story. "Clint Eastwood cries on Johnny Carson." Some of the headlines were mocking. Some were sensational. But most of them got it. A revolution had started. In the weeks and months that followed, Johnny received thousands of letters. Not from fans of the show, from fathers, from sons. Stories of phone calls made after years of silence. Stories of letters written and actually delivered. Stories of "I love you" spoken aloud for the first time. One letter stood out. It was from a man in Nebraska. "Dear Mr. Carson, I watched your interview with Clint Eastwood last night. I haven't talked to my son in 6 years. We had a fight about something stupid, and neither of us would back down. When Clint read his father's letter, I started crying. I realized I was doing the same thing. Waiting until it was too late. Letting pride win. I called my son this morning, first time in 6 years. We talked for 3 hours. He's coming for Christmas. I just wanted you to know. That interview saved my family. Thank you." Johnny kept that letter in his desk until his final show. Sometimes, late at night, when the studio was empty and the cameras were off, he would take it out and read it again. A reminder of why he did what he did. A reminder that television wasn't just entertainment. Sometimes it was a lifeline. Clint Eastwood went on to become one of the most celebrated directors in cinema history. He made films about complex, vulnerable men. He won Oscars. He gave speeches where he talked openly about his father, about his children, about the importance of emotional honesty. But when people asked him about the defining moment of his career, he never mentioned the films. He never mentioned the awards. He talked about a night on The Tonight Show when he stopped being a cowboy and started being a man. When he read his father's letter to millions of strangers and realized that strength wasn't about staying silent. It was about having the courage to speak. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Share it with a father who needs to hear this. Share it with a son who's waiting for a call that might never come. Drop a comment about someone you need to say, "I love you" to, and then stop reading. Pick up the phone. Say the words. Don't wait for a letter from beyond the grave to tell you what you should have known all along. The people you love need to hear it, and you need to say it. Now, while you still can.